Welcome, 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 everyone. Ronald Murphy's with us tonight. We're going to talk about fairies and other things. And me and the invisible Lala, she's put on her invisibility cloak makeup, and she'll be here in a minute. How's it going?
It's going well, my friend. How's everything going with you and the Ravens? I'm not sure if you're a Ravens fan or not, but you know, they trashed the Steelers here. So I mean, you have a lot to look forward to, and they're actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're like 10-point favorites against Buffalo or something.
Yeah, it's pretty. Look, it's amazing how rapidly all of the fortunes in the NFL changed when the New England Patriots disintegrated.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you've had a good team down there for a while. It's not like you guys have been playing with a lot of chumps. It's just like the perfect storm right now. It's great coaching, it's great player development, and I think that this year might be the year.
It could be. I got to tell you, being from the South, I followed the Atlanta Falcons, but of course they never win anything much. Occasionally they have a lucky year, and so we get going with them. And I get off. And but the Atlanta Braves, man, I've been an Atlanta Braves fan forever. I mean, you know, Hank Aaron was from Alabama. I'm from Alabama. You get the idea. So what have you been up to?
You know what? I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of writing. I just released a book here about a month ago called The Frugal Family Guide to Ghost Hunting in Gettysburg. So I'm very happy with that. And then the next book that I hope to have out by summer is The Haunted History of Westmoreland County, Volume 2. Hello there, Lala. We've been patiently waiting for you. So two guys have been getting together and talking about sports.
Football.
Oh, yay. Do I put this Can you hear me?
Yeah, he can hear you.
Sorry, fine.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
That's perfect. No, that's perfect. No. How's everything going for you folks? You're surviving the weather, all that good stuff?
Yeah. I mean, it snowed, what, 5 inches?
And we've got the snow is still in the yard except for where there is direct sunlight. And almost all of our backyard is shadowed. But slowly but surely the sun is getting higher in the air, and I can see the light sliding down the bank, and it'll eventually melt it off.
I cannot wait. This is that intermediary part of the season, right? So, you know, this is the dead of winter, of course, but it's odd because it's kind of a misnomer because the dead of winter is actually starting to give way now to the spring, right? So I'm excited. I cannot wait until February 1st. You know, we have our Groundhog Day and all that good stuff, but we have hope in the air, folks. So as soon as we get to February 1st, you know, we got, another month until spring. So there's new life in the air.
That's it.
I'm ready.
Okay, so
I'm ready.
All the hustle and bustle, we interrupted you talking about your book. Please go over it again.
Okay, yes. So the frugal guide, the frugal family guide to ghost hunting in Gettysburg, because I have 5 kids. So whenever I go any place, I like to take at least a passel of them with me. Sometimes not all 5, but I've taken 4 of them before to Gettysburg, and I know that if you're not careful there, in a weekend you could seriously drop a big chunk of change. So as somebody that wants to travel with my kids, I thought, what happens if I start doing some research about how to do tours with your family to make it economically feasible? Because there's places all around this country, Savannah, Georgia, Gettysburg, and Salem, and Boston. I thought maybe what I will do is start putting together some sort of book on advice on how to do it so you don't go bankrupt. So the first book is out, and if it sells well, I'll probably do some follow-up ones. But the second book that I have out is called The Haunted History of Westmoreland County, Volume 2, which is a follow-up to a book that I wrote about 7 years ago about the history of the county in which I live in.
Yeah, so my middle name is Westmoreland for a reason.
Oh, fantastic. There you go. There you go.
I'm a descendant of the big Westmoreland family from Pennsylvania down to Virginia.
Wow.
The biggest one of them, the wealthiest, were in Virginia, and I wish that all that money flowed down 5 generations, but it's okay. But my grandfather, father, and me all have Westmoreland as our middle name, and it's gone on for a while. It's gone on for a while.
Wow, wow. Yeah, I mean, I am lucky. And one of the reasons truly why I stay in this area is because of the history. Westmoreland County is a very beautiful county. We have some lakes, we have a lot of, rivers and creeks, a lot of areas to hike, a lot of wildness here. But we also have the proximity to Pittsburgh as well. But there's a lot of history here. And as I said in the first book, if it was not for Westmoreland County, America, as we know, would be vastly different, because this is the crucible in which George Washington was tested. He would not have become president unless he was able to succeed in the French and Indian War and his time here in Western Pennsylvania. So, like I said, I'm very lucky to live in the area that I am in. The weather sucks sometimes. The football and the baseball teams start sucking pretty good, but besides that, everything else is pretty good.
I've been to Gettysburg several times because I lived in New Jersey for 2 decades.
Yes.
I've been over there, walk out there early morning or at dusk and into evening, and I've been on the battlefields, heard the guns fire, seen apparitions walk across the field, heard people moaning and groaning. I've been through all that. I really won't get her and our teenager up there and have them look around. The nice thing for us is we live so close. It's an hour and a half, and then we can come back home.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a 3-hour drive for me. But yeah, maybe someday this summer we should plan on a get together where we can meet each other there, and maybe even do some sort of on the field type of show.
Absolutely, and I can't wait to see how she interacts with the other side.
Well, sure. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? So I've been doing this stuff for years. I have no abilities whatsoever. I think I probably have basic human intuition. But whenever someone is gifted and you take them out onto the field, sometimes they even act as like a paranormal Wi-Fi. A lot of things are attracted to that kind of stuff. So I would love to be there and see what happens. We'll put a camera on her and just roll and see what happens.
We should do it. Let's plan on it.
Yep.
All right. You got some questions, I know. Okay. He is ready to talk about fairies or whatever you want to talk about.
So we have 3 topics we thought about doing, but it can go wherever. And
sure.
So the topics are you wrote books about relationships.
I did. Yep.
And then the other one was fairies, but I wanted to start with the relationship. Well, you can start where you want, but those are the 2.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So what made you start writing that, and just what did you learn from all that?
So curiously, what led me to write my first book on relationships was whenever I finished up with a book that I wrote on fairies. And I was looking at this theory of vibration and resonance and frequency. And I thought, that's fine and dandy whenever you talk about things that are paranormal. But what happens if we start applying this stuff to a human context? And, I've come to the conclusion, and this isn't so new age that it's preposterous, because there have been studies shown that, if you take two things, that like everything has a natural frequency to it, right? We have frequencies, everything has a frequency. But if you take two unlike objects and you put them close together, over time, that frequency will sync up. And I thought, well, isn't that an interesting thing? Because I've done a lot of counseling in my adult life as well, too, from the perspective of working with families. And I thought, especially whenever I was, talking to people that were going through, problems within their marriage, one of the things of advice I gave is, just sit in a room together and don't necessarily say anything. But it was the idea of to let everything kind of sync up. And I thought, well, let's take, this a little bit deeper. And, I've been in bad relationships myself. I know what it's like to hurt. I know what it's like to misjudge people and think that you found somebody you were going to be with forever, when in fact that is your biggest mistake. So I thought, well, how can we kind of clear this up so we don't make these kind of mistakes? And what I find out is that, the idea of stooping low or stooping below us is something that's very, very common. A lot of people don't want to be alone, and I can understand that completely. But sometimes the loneliest times I've ever had is whenever I was in the room with somebody, and
Right.
that's a terrible feeling, not to have that camaraderie, and also not to have that reciprocity, which is essential nowadays. A lot of people give everything. They become exhausted within the relationship, and they're getting nothing back. And that can be a very draining thing. And I think that, I've been hurt before, and I kind of want to write about this stuff so other people don't fall in that same kind of trap. And also to tell people it's okay. It's okay to, get into a place where you have to say, I need to extricate myself from this in order to be healthy. It's okay to do that, right? It's okay to be the good person in a relationship and simply fall in love with the wrong person. That's human. That's the way we learn. But I think that I wanted to put out a kind of a framework about, some of the warning signs, some of the red flags, so people can go in it with more, without the blinders on, so to speak.
So another thing that people need to know, and buddy, I tell you, I know, one person in a relationship with depression is rough on the relationship. Two people in both depressed in a relationship, it's just toxic. And the things people should know is it's no sin to ask for help. And nowadays, there are miraculous treatments for depression. So some of it based on the current willingness of medical professionals to use things that before were illegal drugs are now usable to treat depression. And from personal experience, they are miracle working.
Sure. And let's piggyback on that, because I think what you said is very important. There should no longer be a stigma attached to getting help, but for men especially, right? Because women are more, I think, prone to saying there's something wrong. I'm going to ask for help. But men, I'm telling you, I'm putting this out, I've been in therapy before myself. I know what it's like to feel empty and lost and need somebody to talk to. And I want to say to all men out there that one of the strongest things that you can do, one of the most powerful things that you can do, is take control of those things that are bothering you and ask for a helping hand. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It doesn't make you less masculine or anything. And at the end of the day, you will not only appreciate yourself more, but if you're already in a partnership or you're looking for a partnership, whatever, you'll be much more at an advantage having that feeling of control over yourself going in. oftentimes, now I have 2 teenage daughters as well too, so this is horrible. But a lot of times there's this notion, romantic notion of, finding somebody that completes you. And what I always put out there, I said, another person cannot complete you. They can complement you. If you need completed, the thing that you must do foremost is work on yourself. Now, we're all going to be a work in progress. We're never going to be a finished product. But if you there you go. If you say that you need somebody else to complete you, then you need to step back and like I said, work on your own psyche for a while.
That and everyone here listening, without exception, was harmed by the isolation and insanity of the nearly 2 years of the COVID insanity.
I kind of liked it personally. I didn't mind it too much.
I'm a very, very gregarious, go to conferences, go to meetings, belong to clubs, amateur radio, astronomy, whatever. And I was completely isolated. And I had just moved into a new home with no family near. And I was in there 2 years because I had had heart attacks. I had comorbidities, and until the vaccination came out, I was a prisoner. And so it's depressing.
It is.
And so people should admit, and there's no more damage. You cannot possibly see more damage than just going to a school and talking to people. The kids were really harmed.
That's right. Yeah, well, it's still happening now. I have kids I have 2 kids that are still in school. One of my kids was so damaged that he's actually homeschooled because he's cyber schooled. He could never get into the swing of things of going back again, right? Because he was so intense. And I think that he kind of actually retreated from the world and became so introspective that the only way he's going to be able to succeed in the educational system is by doing it on his own. Now my other boy, who is 12, he is much more, as you said, gregarious and outgoing and everything, and he's doing pretty well. But there is still that learning curve there. It's almost like that window of opportunity in order to learn speech. I think everybody has this window of opportunity to go in, whenever school settles in, and you get into a rhythm and everything. But I think a lot of kids have missed that proverbial window, and now they're trying to deal with all this stuff. And you talk about depression and anxiety. There are kids that are crying nowadays because they have to go into a setting that involves other children and a teacher.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
All right. Ask him about fairies. Come on. You don't want to ask. You know you do.
Well, I mean, okay, whatever. I wanted to know more about this, but okay, we'll go to fairies. Well, the first thing I was thinking earlier is what got you into fairies to begin with?
Right. Okay, so I was in graduate school when I was taking a class on the history. I'm trying to think about what it was actually called. It was the history of England, but I think it was like after 1650. It was some sort of weird graduate class. It was taught by this very intelligent woman, but she didn't have a very good rapport with the students. It was kind of like, not a lot of questions and answers. It was more kind of like a recitation class. But one of our grades for the thing was this major paper that we had to write. And I thought, I don't want to talk about, kings or anything. And I written about Shakespeare, but this was after Shakespeare. So I thought, gosh darn it, let's go with fairies, So I wrote about fairies in this period of England. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to find very much. And I found this, wealth of information that, fairies were still very much believed in. I mean, they were kind of anecdotal and maybe a little bit of tongue in cheek at times. But for the most part, if you would have go back in time to the late 1600s in England, you would have went into the villages. More often than not, people would have had a very strong sense that the world around them was pervasive with angelic spirits and demonic spirits and forest spirits and everything else like that. And I think in a lot of places it's still like that. So fairies to me is a representation of the physical world, right? In a personification, an anthropomorphism of the physical world in ways in which we can comprehend it. And that's something that the alchemists were attempting to do for quite a long period of time, to understand the rules of nature, and in order to work with nature, in order to cohabitate with nature, you had to understand the forces that were involved within the natural world. So, like fire was symbolized in the form of a salamander, and we have the sylphs as these spirits of the air, and the gnome is the spirit of the earth, right? So a lot of these things that we still talk about, gnomes, everybody has garden gnomes. I think a lot of people do in their yard. This dates back to a time whenever this was a fundamental belief. One of my favorite alchemists was Paracelsus. Now, he's considered the father of mineralogy. He's the one that named the word zinc. He found that, that it's possible that there's things out in the world that can make us healthy that people never thought about. So not only did he work and give the name to the mineral zinc, he also gave the word to the gnome as well. That was his invention. Because he believed that there was the spirits of the earth, and in order to understand what kind of aid they can provide to us, we had to understand them, communicate with them, and I think that was something, we're talking about like alchemy. It seems like a lot about like witchcraft, but this was a precursor to chemistry, right? This is where chemistry had its genesis, and people were still believing in mermaids, and people were still believing in these little spirits, floating around. So I think that we need to almost go back to that. I'm talking a little bit to Bob before you joined us, but he was talking about the possibility of you having something there at your house as well too, seeing things, possibly even gifts being taken and such. I think we in a modern world have kind of, again, we'll talk about frequencies and vibrations. I think there's a natural frequency out there. It's kind of like if you take a tuning fork and you hit it, it's kind of like that natural frequency for everything. And it's still out there, but we as human beings have decided that we're going to step away from that. Now, it's still out there, mind you, and we're just not, accepting of it or believing it. And out of that frequency, I think there are indeed intelligences as well, too. And those intelligences is what we now call fairies. And in order to get along with them, we have to, invitation or acceptance of the world around us as well too. Places like Iceland, they will refuse to cut down certain trees, or they'll move a highway because they believe that it's the place where elves and fairies live, right? And places in England still open up their doors or have doors facing certain ways to allow the ingress and the regress of, or the egress of these forest spirits. Now, of course, that all sounds very antiquated and a lot of mumbo jumbo, but there's something to be said for this cultural memory and why in 2025 we still talk about fairies.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I think we've gone too far in the direction of physical materialism, and it's time to realize, look, we have science now that shows that we do not perceive reality, that any entity that quote perceives actual reality is selected against by evolution, and thus we see what our perceptual system allows us solely for the purpose of optimizing our outcome. So we're better suited for the environment we're living in by having senses that help optimize our survival. And so we live in an illusion, and it's time to understand that not everything that's out there can we see with our two eyes, smell with our nose, feel with our hand, and the two of us live with all of that kind of other stuff all the time, and so do a lot of other people.
And that's beautifully stated, as a matter of fact. So let's take this a step further. So, fairies really became something that the Victorians latched onto. But right around that time, we had something called theosophy going on. And this was a religious movement that had so many, it was New Age before it was New Age, okay? And part of that movement was coming out of this industrial revolution. So in England, especially, little kids were now going to work in factories at 6 years old, right? People were talking about making money. There was now homelessness, right? There was an economy now, and it was based upon, money. The bartering system was gone. People were abandoning their farms and going to work in mills and stuff. So it was out of that people thought, this can't go on anymore. We're not only losing the natural world, but we're losing our identity as people as well. But that unfortunately never caught on. And now we have the world in which we live in today. But as you said, my friend, you must keep into account that there is more to this world than meets the eye. That's perfectly stated. And whenever I was a teacher, I thought that I would do an experiment. So I was a lot of my teaching was based upon the natural world, observation, children learning through experience, in the world around them, asking questions, things like that. So one of the things I wanted to do is get their sensation of the world around them. So in the morning, I put on classical music for about half an hour, right? And I said, you don't have to write anything down. You don't have to do anything except just simply listen. So the idea of tuning in was something that I was working with. So we listened to the music, and then after that was over, we decided to go for a walk down by this river that flowed quite near our school, and it was wooded on both sides. And you would see bald eagles every now and then, and blue herons. I mean, it was a very, very cool little place right in the middle of town. So you couldn't ask for a better place. So it was when we went down near this babbling creek, and I thought you could hear things, right? You could hear the sound of the water, you could hear the birds singing, you could hear insects. Occasionally you could hear a frog off in the distance. And you hear all that. So we listened to music, we listened to classical music at the beginning. Now listen to the music that nature is putting out there. So they did that for a while, and they closed their eyes and everything. And we did this for a while. And then I handed out pieces of paper, and I said, okay, now draw what you see, whatever you're sensing in these sounds that you hear, draw what you see. There were 20 children in the class, and 18 of them drew a figure that had eyes and a rounded head. And that's what the sense that they had got was out there with them, okay? So in my book, I have a whole chapter on this. But if you look at the reoccurring images of whether it's the Wandjina in Australia, or some of the petroglyphs that you find in the American Southwest, this idea that there are figures out there, or very gray-looking figures, whenever you talk about extraterrestrials, but a very, very odd look with this rounded head and these almond-shaped eyes. But that's what they were seeing out there in the environment. That's what their mind's eyes picked up. Now, to take this a step even further, we talk about abductions, and we talk about all this kind of things, alien abductions. But I have to point out as well, too, the first time people were abducted, they were claiming that it was done by fairies, right? So the idea that fairies have always been out there has been part of our cultural lineage, and it's really embroidered into our DNA. We are just now in 2025 seeing things from a modern world because we've stepped away from the natural world. I think the sooner we step back into the natural world, the more we can see how much a part of the world that we are, and things that we consider very frightening and very dangerous is just nothing more than our projection onto a world that we don't understand because we had forgotten it for so many years.
I agree.
So Angie asks, Ron, do you know if fairies also travel in other forms such as orbs in different shapes?
Yes. So I wrote a book that came out about 4 months ago, published by Small Town Monsters. It's called Lights in the Mist. Also, folks, if you get a chance, it's absolutely free. It's on YouTube. It's called UAPs of the Forest, which is a documentary based upon my book put together by Tyler Hall. Again, Small Town Monsters. If you get a chance, look at it. So the idea that there are orbs out there, that people are seeing them, and they're also even capturing them on film, which this documentary does even show what we were capturing. Yes, absolutely. People are seeing things out there, seeing energies that are apparently intelligent energies. And not only that, the idea of shape shifting is very much of in the vernacular of the fairy realm. Fairies are known to use something that's called glamour. Now, that's a term that we use now for women's cosmetics and such, but it is a way in which these entities could appear as something differently than they actually are. So, one of the theories that I'm coming to right now, the more that I work with this idea of frequency and vibration, the idea of maybe intelligence energies right in the world itself appearing as orbs and such, what happens if the things that we call Bigfoot and Dogman and all these other things are nothing more than projections into our psyche of these natural elements that are out there? Our mind is actually putting it together to try to understand what's going on. And or maybe these things are injecting this into our mind as well too, in order to appear as something that they're not. So we just simply leave them alone.
Right.
So, Angie, thanks you for asking the question. So, the all the rage right now are the telepathy tapes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I've been reading Bob Monroe's books and all sorts of other things. So, we shouldn't divorce ourselves from the world around us, but we need to expand our minds to the world we haven't seen for a while because we closed it all off. And
That's right.
so,
That's the other point too. Yeah, we also like to destroy things as well. So some of the things that we would like to revisit aren't there anymore.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly.
I don't doubt it because we're pretty destructive.
We are destructive. I often think that I think that nature and human beings are meant to live in this symbiotic relationship. And I think that everything in this world that ills us, there has to be an antidote out there as well too. So you think about the cures for cancer and things. They might have been burned over in a rainforest, or dug out of the sea, or somehow. And you look at the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I think that this all has something to do because people have been thinking about this since we were able to put our ideas down onto paper, or in that case onto carve it into stone. But the idea that we're looking for something out there, something that's beyond us, and whenever Gilgamesh gets the flower of immortality, it's taken away from him by this sea monster, right? So we have this intervention by nature itself to take back something that man is not worthy to have. And we see that playing again and again in all kinds of Greek and Roman mythology. The idea of stealing fire from the sun, and then that constant torture because that happens. So yeah, I think that everything, I think that all religion has a truth to it. I think all mythologies have a truth to it, and we really have to look at each other as fellow citizens in a world. Not my ideas aren't right, your ideas aren't right. Let's take this whole kind of collective ideas and see what we come up with. I think that's the only way we're all going to get along, and not only get along, but maybe even find a way to cure some of these maladies that are haunting all of us as human beings.
Right.
So I've been in science and engineering for 60 years. 60 years I've been doing it. But I also had experiences savantism multiple times in my life in the form of what was now commonly called downloads. And there is just not possible that my consciousness is solely contained in the neural matter of my brain if something of the universe is coming in and teaching me. Especially, in other words, that's BS.
Yep. Oh no. So yeah. So you are a man of science. You're a learned man, and to bring that up, you sound, if this was in an academic setting, right, you would probably be shown the door because that's something that people don't want to talk about. Right. But how else can you explain it? How else can you explain even genius, right? The idea of genius itself is a very transcendent type of thing, right? And we look at things like Gnosticism, the idea that you have to go through different types of experiences to get this knowledge. I mean, faiths around the world and mythologies around the world and belief systems around the world all talk about that we are kind of born this blank slate, and through certain circumstances we are able to transcend the world in which we were given and become something different that is able to help those around us. And I think that we need to talk about this stuff. There's no reason why we do not have these discussions, these intellectual discussions in academic settings. The sooner science realizes there's more out there than just numbers and figures, then we can start having these conversations, say, and then the paranormal then becomes a bit more normal. And, I would love to see that happening. I would love to be able to see that happening.
One more thing, and then it's your turn. I get going when I get excited.
Hey, no worries, brother. No worries.
The following is a thing that really hit me hard. It really did. When I was just beginning to open my mind, I was watching a YouTube video of the roundtable between all of the Nobel laureates for 2023 or 2022. I can't remember which, but it was around then. And people should go and find that and listen to it. So the hostess from the Nobel group was interviewing all of them about their inspiration for all of this brilliant work they'd done. 9 out of 10 of them got a download, and they said it.
Wow. That is incredible. Absolutely.
It was almost traumatic. It was so life-changing.
Wow. And I think that's a good point that you made. I think the people that have experienced that are more apt to talk about it, right? Because it happened to them. What are you supposed to say? They're not going to sit there and try to reject what happened to them. But I think that more people need to come open about this kind of stuff. Whether it's called a muse or divine inspiration or whatever like that, it's definitely happening. These downloads, as you called it, are indeed happening. We are, a lot of people, science in general likes to think that we are, these living machines, right? We're programmable. So why can't we have downloads every now and then, right? Why can't we pick up these Wi-Fi signals and download information? I believe it fully. So to kind of put this in perspective and kind of not so. I'm very gifted to have a very brilliant daughter, and she's actually in school right now to become a doctor. So I'm very, very proud of her. But we were talking one time because a lot of the case now with the young kids is not to be religious, right? Although I was raised religious and my kids were raised Catholic as well too, it's a little bit. It's not really in vogue to go around and say that you're a believer, right? So a lot of the people that she surrounds herself with are non-believers, right? But she was talking to me one time about the nervous system, and she was talking about how certain things in our body that carry electricity are insulated, just like electrical cables are insulated. I thought, So like, how does this come to be, right? And we talk about the idea of download, and I thought, I wonder if there's people out there, if there's doctors out there that have ever considered consulting with an electrical engineer about things like brain injuries and things, or spinal injuries, because that might be one of the things that we need to do. Is everybody needs to kind of put their own talents to work and figure this stuff out.
So Gary Nolan, which is well known to the UFO people as a genetics, etc., professor at Stanford, and he, between first mapping of the human genome to CRISPR-Cas9, so you could edit the human genome, he had 8 or 9 downloads. Each of them he got a patent for. He started a company and became fabulously wealthy. And now he's put all of his money back into his own laboratory, not going off yachting around the world. He's giving back because he feels the universe kind of gave him a gift. It's kind of amazing. All right.
It is amazing. It is amazing. And that's something that doesn't happen very much, right? Because a lot of people are going out there to become doctors simply because they want to get rich, right? But if you look at things like what happened at the University of Pittsburgh with the founding of the polio vaccine, right? It was free. And I remember seeing an interview with Jonas Salk, and they asked him, they said, you could be, filthy rich about this. And he said, well, does the sun charge to give off its light? No. He came across something that was going to vastly improve the human condition. And he did not see that as a way to make money, but as a way to improve the world around him. And what all that you're saying there is so enlightening. And I do like the phrasing that you put in there, because we are, like I said, we're all in this together. We all have talents to bring to the table, but absolutely we need to work together for the common good, not just to get rich. Although, look, money is okay. I have no problem with money whatsoever. It's just the idea of trying to capitalize. People a lot of times say that cancer would never be cured because we make too much money off of the treatment of it. Well, I think that we need to have a different mindset, and we think about how much productive these people are going to be to the natural flow of things if we are able to cure them, right? I mean, it makes no sense to me that we would not cure and we would simply treat.
Yeah, because I mean, look, the brilliant people that come up with this stuff, they're going to move off and do other things. I have changed my area of study and work 9 times since I left the university. I get tired of one thing and I go to another.
Yeah, I agree. I personally become jaded as well too. So I was in education for a number of years. Then I went over to the counseling side of education, where I work with students and families. So you do. I think you become a little bit jaded because it doesn't seem as vital anymore. It doesn't. You seem like, I've been spinning my wheels. Nothing's changing. I'm trying to change. Nothing's changing. So I go through the exact same thing that you do.
Oh yeah. What?
Your turn.
Oh my God, the pressure.
Just don't be pressure. Just have fun. Ron's easy to talk to.
No, when you guys were talking, that made me think of when somebody did a side-by-side of someone's eyes close up with the veins and all that, and then a picture of the universe, right?
No.
So when you were talking about the wires and the energy, I thought that's interesting, because I think we kind of just keep repeating ourselves in different ways, the patterns of life, I guess. You know what I mean? So that makes sense what you're talking about and healing people. But, God forbid if we actually healed anybody for real.
Right. Well, I mean, we are humans, but I think that we also have to remember that we are cosmic as well too. We are part of the everlasting, right? We come from the same substance in which stars were created. And I think that once we put that into perspective, that each of us here are so, we're all miracles. The chance of you and I and Bob sitting here talking to each other, the evolutionary steps that our forefathers had to go through, it's astronomically not in our favor that we're sitting here talking to each other right now. But there's some reason why that all of us here together talking, and all the people that are listening are here for a reason. There's some reason for this convergence, and it's not by accident, my friends.
So it is a miracle that the energy of the universe organized itself into our being. So when I began seeing the pictures that were taken by Hubble, James Webb, etc., and the organization of all the visible matter and energy, all of it, that make up the universe from here almost to the beginning of our universe, looks like a massive neural network. Most of the universe is a void, and the galaxies and the stars, and they're in strings connected to each other, and at each end of the string is a galactic cluster that looks like a neuron. I already believe in the universal consciousness, and I just know in my heart, whether science gets there or not before I go, that the universe is conscious, and that we are, all of us, facets of the universal consciousness.
Yep, preach on, brother. If you had a cult, I would be joining it right now, because that's absolutely the case. It's absolutely the case. I think that what you're saying is very, very true. I'm also a fan of the Gaia theory as well, too, that the Earth itself is a living organism as well, a part of this greater chain of being, right? So when we look at things, we look at rocks and we look at all this stuff has a purpose. It's all, it's all alive in its own way, whether you call it, animism or whatever. But I think that we all have that divine spark within us. And whatever you want to call divine, you can assign to that whatever you want to call it. But I think that there is this connection that we all have. And this, like I said previously, the sooner we realize that there's more in commonality with each other, then maybe we won't be so apt to aim a gun at somebody. If you think about this, think about all the people in the world that are devoting their time to war making. If we could say in just 1 year, we're going to say what we're going to do is we're going to have this global truce where we're going to take all the money in which we're devoting to the military and to kill people, and let's put it together, get our great minds together, all of us work together to heal one disease. And if that works in a year, because look what happened with with COVID. Whatever side of the aisle you might be on, we were able to get out a vaccine pretty gosh darn quick, right? And the jury's still out about what it does and what it doesn't, but whatever had happened, right? I took it. I'm still alive. I've heard horrible things happen to other people, but because of that vaccine, we're able to get out there, and life has kind of returned to normal, right? But think about what we could do if all these minds around the world would try to cure Alzheimer's, right? Or pancreatic cancer, or anything like that. My daughter was at a conference 2 summers ago up in Massachusetts, and I attended with her. And there was a Nobel Prize winner there, and I forget what his name was. But he said that we're only about 10 years away from where we can go in and turn diseases off at the genetic level. Imagine being able to do something like that. I hope that I'm still around to see it. I'm hoping that my children, will benefit from this. But the idea, and again, this goes back to what you had said about 30 minutes ago. The world has become, profit driven. It's forgot about everybody else. Everything else is kind of like in the wake, right? It's all about me, and what I can get out of you. And I see what your worth is and what value you are to me. But if we all look at it as we are all in this together, I think that we would, and that might sound like a whole bunch of, hand holding kumbaya stuff, but I truly believe that. I think that we should act as a human race rather than everybody running a separate race.
Well, I think the organizing principles for our civilization have zero choice but to change for multiple reasons. These include, if you want to wake up to the truth, go look at the demographics of the world. That's number one. Look at artificial intelligence. Look at how much it takes to get stuff done. And the thing you realize is artificial intelligence, which people fear, is coming along at just the right time to prevent the collapse of civilization, because it will replace the zero birth rate we're about to enter. I mean, just I want people to go look at two statistics. Russia and China, both of them are undergoing the fastest demographic collapse in the history of man. Their populations are just about to completely collapse. But that means that we need to work with our minds and our intellects and find a way to replace the labor and enhance our lives and so forth. But we need a different organizing principle, and I keep saying it, and people think I'm cuckoo, but anyway, I'll say it anyway. Abraham Maslow, who was one of the brilliant humanist psychologists ever, wrote down a set of principles, and his organizing principles were, if we want to have a good society, we have to organize it so that we fulfill Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can't expect somebody to be a genius if they can't feed themselves and they have no place to live. And this strata in between the bottom and the top, we have to work our way up so we can get there.
That's right.
And if we all did it together, it would be awesome.
Right. So that's the first thing you learn whenever you're dealing with children. You know, whenever you're going into teaching, you're dealing with education of young people. You learn about that because a child is not going to be able to learn if he's homeless or if he's hungry. You know, all this kind of stuff has to be met. Yeah. So we really do need to rethink things. That what you just said gave me a little bit of optimism, though, because I try to be an optimistic person, but I look around and I see the world just falling apart. But I think that we need to be kinder and gentler, definitely. But we need to do it for different reasons. You know what I mean? Like, we need to do it because it's the right thing to do, right? Not to gain votes or to get political superiority, but just simply because it's the right thing to do.
So if you want to hear Elon Musk's constant refrain, he's talking about go out, have babies, because our pop. But the facts are, it's too late.
It's too late.
It costs so much money to raise a child and have them be self-sufficient that people are having fewer children. But the facts are, we are producing what is necessary to augment our lives in a way that we can live with fewer people on the earth, and we'll burn less of our natural resources, and these thinking machines will optimize our use of resources.
That's right. Yeah, I got to see President Trump speak in Johnstown over the summer, and that was his platform. He was talking about having lots and lots of babies because they're going to be working in factories in the future. Oh, that seems rather Orwellian to me. That's dystopian to me. You know, to think about we're going to produce children simply to put them at work in factories. I don't like that at all. I would say, you know, let's have children so we can open up more universities. That's perfectly okay. But yeah, we are upside down right now. The things that are being taught in universities now, and one of the reasons why I'm not teaching now, even though I was teaching, you know, in the school level and not in the university level, is because you are kind of force fed about what you have to teach, right? So in order to go out there and appeal and keep your job, you have to teach what they tell you to teach. So the idea of free thinking is not even there anymore. You know, they're telling you what to do, and they're going to grade you on their perception of what they consider the facts, and that's a scary thing.
Yeah, I don't like this teaching to the exam, and you have teachers being handed a script with no freedom of expression on how they teach. That's ridiculous.
Yes. Well, I will tell you this, and you know, this is going to go on record, but of all the jobs that I've ever had, I will tell you the job that has the least intelligent people in it is the people that are teaching your children. Now, at the university level, that's completely different. But yeah, if you're worried about your child that's in high school or your child that's in grade school that's not really, achieving, the way you think he's achieving, look at what he's being taught. Absolutely, I feel the same way, and I think you have to do so much education has to be done at home. I remember my mother. Every day was a teaching moment with her. But nowadays, kids don't even go outside. They sit in front of computer games and everything. So that's the other thing that has to change as well. We are definitely evolving and progressing, but we also have to remember from where we came. And we actually went full circle now on this in this show.
my mother, who was my angel. She was amazing. She did a great job of raising us, but that didn't mean she was easy. It meant if we were getting rowdy and she couldn't get stuff done, if it was raining and lightning outside, she still threw us out the front door and told us to go swim in the mud puddles.
That's all I remember. I remember that. That's right. That's right. But we appreciate
and we had to cut our own switches if we made that.
Yes. Yeah, but we definitely appreciated what we had. That's the other thing too, is that, the things that my kids have right now were things that I couldn't even have dreamt of whenever I was a kid. I was raised by a single mom. She was a waitress. Back in the day, there wasn't things like child support and everything like that. So, what she went through, the sacrifices that she made to get me to where I'm at, and the sacrifices that I had to make, I never would dream that would have happened with my kids. But again, too, my daughter, the one who's studying to be a doctor, she has had straight A's throughout her entire academic career, and she has taken college classes whenever she was in high school, and I still could not get the aid to send her to the college of her choice. See, that's the other thing that's happening as well too. College is becoming exponentially more expensive year after year. So what's going on in this idea of charging people for school? You have a lot of good minds that simply cannot afford to go. Right. And that's a scary situation as well too. Whenever you think that there's kids out there that have the potential, but they can't find the funding, so they forego their education.
So old Al makes a point here about it bothering him that complex work environment teaching is impossible because things move way too fast for a neophyte. A freeing thing that will come, because I use this stuff regularly, is artificially intelligence-based teaching. Sits there and it teaches you stuff, and then it tests you. And if you don't get it, it reorganizes it and teaches it a different way. And if you don't get it, it reorganizes it and teaches a different way. And so it can learn the optimal way you learn and completely individualize the instruction because it's just software. It doesn't need to have a script from an education department in Washington that has not a damn thing of understanding of Native Americans out in Oklahoma versus people who live on a farm in Mississippi versus people who are living on the range in North Dakota. It just doesn't know all that. You can't have one size fits all. So I think artificial intelligence aid to teaching, where individualized instruction can be optimized for the way you learn, will be an amazing thing.
I love it. I think that's a great idea, my friend.
Okay. We have 2 minutes left, so can you tell everybody? First of all, please come back again. I love when
I will be here. I was flattered whenever you asked me to be on here. I've been following you guys for a while now. I think that what you do, and whenever you have these interviews, is you make it very conversational. And as a listener, as somebody that does tune into your shows, it makes it a great way to learn, right? Because I think that at the end of the day, everybody's probably learned something after the show goes. So I'm, like I said, I'm flattered. Anytime you guys ask me to be on, I will gladly be on. And let's hope that we can get together sometime in June, July, or August and we'll do a Gettysburg adventure. And let's try to set up something where we're in the field and actually can roll a show and do it right there.
Yeah. We can stream StreamYard from my phone. It's not a problem.
Absolutely, we can do that. That's right.
All right. So, how can people get in touch with Ronald Murphy?
Well, you can go on good old Amazon. You know, my books are available there. Ronald L. Murphy Jr. On Yahoo, it's Ronald L. Murphy Jr. at yahoo.com. So if you want to email me, and you can also find me on Facebook as well too, Ronald L. Murphy Jr. And you can like my author page. Yeah. So if anybody out there agrees with me or disagrees with me or wants to have an open discussion about any of this stuff, feel free to throw me an email. I have no problem with that whatsoever. And the only way I'm going to be able to learn is by communication with other people. So, and every time I'm in there with you guys, I always take something back and I always learn something. So again, like I said, I was very honored and flattered that you invited me on your show.
You're great, Ron. So Dave calls you the cryptographic guru because of all the wonderful books you've written. People, go read Ronald's books. They're very interesting.
Lots of topics.
And lots of different topics. He's a polymath of all these topics. So, and to go look at some of Dave Scott's interviews with Ron, it's worth doing. And go check out his books. Ron, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We have 284 watching live, and it'll be many more than that. So before it's all over, and thank you all for coming. We really do have fun doing this. And Ron, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oops. I'll remember how to do this in a minute. There we go. Bye, y'all.